I never thought I'd inherit a coffee shop, especially not one on a distant moon where the sky glows purple and the rain smells like cinnamon. Yet, here I was, standing in front of the Cosmic Bean, a tiny cafe nestled in the bustling heart of Nebula Market on Vex 9. My Aunt Zyra, who had vanished under mysterious circumstances, left it to me in her will. I hadn't seen her since childhood, but I remembered her stories. Tales of serving coffee to time travelers, intergalactic smugglers, and beings that could shift between dimensions. At the time, I thought she was making it all up. Turns out, she wasn't. The moment I stepped inside, the cafe greeted me with a soft hum, literally. The espresso machine let out a happy chime, the self-cleaning counters glowed warmly, and a hovering menu board flickered to life. Even the air smelled welcoming, like vanilla and fresh starberries. A small spherical robot zipped by, chirping, "Welcome, new owner, please do not rearrange the furniture, it has opinions." I had barely dusted off my aunt's old barista apron when the doorbell jingled, except it wasn't a bell. It was a gentle chime like the sound of distant galaxies colliding. That's when he walked in, or rather ducked in. The massive figure at the door was unlike any customer I'd ever seen. Scaly emerald skin, glowing golden eyes, and a tail that barely fit through the doorway. He wore a tattered cloak dusted with cosmic soot, and his large talons clutched a satchel as if it contained something precious. A dragon. I blinked. Welcome to the Cosmic Bean?" The dragon peered around, his slitted eyes filled with a surprising mix of exhaustion and... was that loneliness? He stepped forward carefully, his claws clicking against the floor. "Do you serve tea?" His voice rumbled like distant thunder. I scrambled behind the counter, scanning the menu. "We have a Nebula chai, Andromeda blossom, and something called Starfire Brew." His eyes flickered at the last one. "Starfire, that will do." As I prepared his drink, I couldn't help but ask, "So, what brings you to the Cosmic Bean?" The dragon sighed, setting down his satchel. "A long journey, and the need for good tea." Cryptic. I handed him the steaming cup of deep red Starfire brew, watching as he wrapped his claws around it. He took a slow sip, then closed his eyes. "It tastes like home." Something about the way he said it made my chest ache. The cafe was quiet for a moment, the soft hum of the machinery and the occasional beep from the floating menu board filling the silence. Then, the dragon opened his satchel and gently placed something on the table, a small glowing gemstone. "I wish to pay for my tea," he said, but there was something hesitant in his tone. I frowned. "That's way too much for just one cup." "No." His gaze locked onto mine. "Not just for the tea, for something more." I swallowed. "What, exactly?" He let out a low, rumbling sigh. "A place to stay, a place to rest. I have been flying for a very long time." I looked around the cafe. It wasn't exactly built to house a dragon, but something in his voice, something raw and tired, made me hesitate. I thought of Aunt Zyra and the wild stories she used to tell. Stories about helping travelers no matter where they came from. I glanced back at the dragon, then at the gemstone, then at the steaming cup of Starfire brew in his claws. Maybe this was just the beginning of a new story. I took a deep breath, then nodded. "All right, but if you're staying, you have to help with the dishes." For the first time, his lips curled into something that might have been a smile. Deal. Yet here I was, standing in front of the Cosmic Bean, nestled between a floating crystal emporium and a neon-lit cyber repair shop in the heart of Nebula Market on Vex 9. The marketplace stretched endlessly, a colorful, chaotic mix of alien merchants, holographic billboards, and airships humming overhead. The air carried the scent of sizzling plasma-roasted meats and something sweet, like starberry pastries. I was still trying to wrap my head around it all. My Aunt Zyra had left me this cafe in her will, but I hadn't seen her since childhood. My memories of her were hazy, mostly stories she told me when I was little. Back then I thought she was just a quirky old woman, who made up tall tales about serving coffee to time travelers and interdimensional smugglers. Now standing here, I realized she wasn't making any of it up. The moment I stepped inside, the cafe responded to me. The espresso machine let out a happy chime, the self-cleaning counters hummed as they polished themselves, and a holographic menu flickered to life above the counter. The entire cafe had an odd sentience to it, as if it were watching. A small spherical robot zipped by my head chirping, "Welcome, new owner. Please do not rearrange the furniture. It has opinions." I was still staring at the hovering menu, trying to figure out what a quantum macchiato was, when the doorbell jingled. Except it wasn't a bell. It was a soft, reverberating chime, like the sound of two galaxies colliding in the far reaches of space. That's when he walked in, or rather, ducked in. The massive figure at the door nearly filled the entire entrance. Emerald green scales, golden eyes that seemed to flicker like molten metal, and a tail that barely fit through the doorway. He wore a tattered black cloak, dusted with cosmic soot, and his sharp talons clutched a satchel like it contained something precious, a dragon, a very tired-looking dragon. I blinked. Welcome to the Cosmic Bean." His gaze swept over the cafe, cautious at first, but then something softened in his expression, like recognition. He stepped forward, moving carefully, as if afraid to break something. "Do you serve tea?" His voice was deep like a distant starquake. I scrambled behind the counter, scanning the list of drinks. Yeah. We have Nebula chai, Andromeda blossom, and something called Starfire Brew." At the mention of that last tea, on his golden eyes glowed. "Starfire," he murmured. "That will do." I quickly got to work, grabbing a crystal teapot and a handful of shimmering stardust leaves from a tin labeled, "For only the most stressed travelers." As I brewed the tea, a warm, golden red glow spread through the pot. The scent was rich, smoky, and strangely ancient. The dragon watched me in silence. I slid the steaming cup toward him. "So, what brings you to the Cosmic Bean?" He took a slow sip, his large claws wrapping around the tiny ceramic cup with delicate precision. For a moment he closed his eyes. "It tastes like home." Something in the way he said it made my chest ache. I didn't know where home was for him, but I knew that feeling all too well, missing a place you couldn't return to. Silence settled between us, comfortable and warm. Outside, the marketplace bustled, filled with chatter and the occasional sound of a spaceship lifting off. Inside, the cafe hummed, the lights dimming slightly as if listening. Then the dragon carefully reached into his satchel and pulled out a glowing gemstone. He placed it gently on the counter. "I wish to pay for my tea," he said, though his voice held something hesitant. I frowned, pushing the gem back toward him. "This is way too much for one cup of tea." "Not just for the tea." His golden gaze locked onto mine. "For something more." I swallowed. "What exactly?" He sighed, a sound that carried ages of exhaustion. "A place to rest. I have been flying for a very long time." I glanced around the cafe. It wasn't exactly built for dragons, but something in his voice, something raw and tired, made me pause. I thought of my Aunt Zira and the stories she used to tell. Stories about helping travelers no matter where they came from. I looked back at the dragon, then at the gemstone, then at the steaming cup of Starfire Brew in his claws. Maybe this was the start of a new story. I took a deep breath, then nodded. "All right, but if you're staying, you have to help with the dishes." For the first time, his lips curled into something that might have been a smile. "Deal."